football season's well underway, everybody. He's Tony George. I'm Scott Spreitzer. We are DocSports.com. We're coming to you right back here where we were last year, the beautiful Red Rock Race and Sportsbook. We're going to be joined by Chuck Esposito in a couple of weeks or next week or whatever it is, but right now it's Tony and I.
He's in the back room still counting all the money he won in the NFL last week.
He's got to be loving it. The teaser money. It was a good week for myself in the NFL and college football. We're going to look to rack it up and do it again, but we're going to talk about a handful of games, Tony and I. Before I get to that, a real quick note. There's a little link below this video, and if you click on it, you're going to be able to take advantage of a trial run, basically, is what I like to call it at DocSports.com. If you're not yet a member, click on that link, set yourself up for that free $60 account, and you can use it on any of his daily packages, any of mine, over at DocSports.com. It is as cool as that. Let's get started. Without further ado, it is BYU and Oregon, little Pac-12 home team taking a look at trying to knock off BYU because it was a tough start for Oregon, and I don't know how much we can hold that against Oregon, that loss to Georgia between the hedges, because Georgia's going to crush everybody between the hedges for the most part. So I kind of throw that out the window a little bit. Is Oregon elite? Obviously not. Are they a good football team? Yes, they still are. So it's Georgia laying 3.5 here, total 58. BYU, well, they come off a very tough outing, but a revenge overtime win over Baylor. Two of their top receivers were out. They still got the win. Tony, two of their top receivers, those guys are still questionable for this game.
Yeah, they used a 3 tight end set, and it's Oregon laying 3.5.
Yep.
You're rusty. We're starting early, Scott.
I said Oregon 3.5.
No, you said Georgia 3.5 coming in. I'm calling you out, but I'm. Hey,
it's
the first
Georgia's
video of the year.
If Georgia's 3.5 at home to BYU.
You and I are going to retire Saturday night.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. You know what? This game here, the one thing, you say you really can't hold them accountable for what happened down in Georgia, because Georgia's just going to slobber knock everybody, which they are. But their coach, if there was any weakness on Georgia's team, which, by the way, there isn't, if there's any weakness on the team, it's a coach that was with them and knew just a few nuances. He could get in there, maybe make some headway. They didn't score a touchdown against them. And I'm not sold on a big win over Eastern Washington, but I am sold on BYU's win last week, albeit a missed kick in overtime. But winning that game against Baylor, who, Scott, a lot of people think Baylor can win the Big 12 this year. I thought that was a huge win for them, minus a couple of players here. And one thing about BYU, and it's always been about BYU, is it's hard, to beat them up in Provo and all this, that, and the other. But last 16 times they're a road dog, they covered 12 of them.
Right.
And they're always a good road dog. I like their quarterback, Hall. I think he's a great quarterback. I like how they can game plan and scheme. I think the hook on the 3 is going to be the difference. I only could lean BYU here. I'm going to stick with them. I'm not sold on Oregon until Oregon plays somebody and plays complete game. And I almost forgot to mention, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, Scott, Bo Nix is in a big game.
That's right.
What's he doing in a big game?
Bo is not a good thing, man.
Mr. T.O. himself. He makes Adrian Martinez, when he was in Nebraska, look like an amateur. So guess what? I think that might come into play here as well. And BYU can get some pressure on the quarterback too, which always gives Bo a lot of
I think the biggest thing is whether or not BYU's drained from last week. And that's tough to judge going in.
It is. And hopefully they get one of those 2 wide receivers back. Right now it's 50-50. Scott, we're going to switch gears here. And other than our beloved Huskers game against Oklahoma, this is the other game that intrigues me this weekend. On a totally different level than Nebraska-Oklahoma. For different reasons. But Michigan State is taking on Washington. Now, Washington, I thought, week 1 really impressed me. Penix at quarterback. They were laying 3.5 here at Red Rock. The board changed. They're now -3. But in my power rating, Scott, I have Michigan State favored a little over 4 points in this game. I'm glad this is your pick and not mine, because I think we're going to find out a lot about both teams in this one.
That's a big difference, 3 to 4.
I know.
3-point dog to 4-point favorite on your rating. Sparty's 7-0 against the spread, the last 7 outside of conference play. And of course, this is outside of conference play. And as far as they're concerned, I like underdogs, Tony, that can run and stop the run. And Michigan State does both. Obviously, they're getting a field goal here. So I like them in this spot. And if you look at Washington, they lost 7 of the last 8 games last year. It didn't start well for Washington. They lose to Montana last year to start things, 13-7. Offense just never really quite got it going. I'm not sure we can really gauge Washington's improvements. They're going to be a better football team this year than last year. But again, you're talking about having played Portland State and Kent State. And the scary thing, I think, if you're Washington, is that they gave up 4 yards per pop on the ground to Kent State. And I just got done telling you that Michigan State can run the football with the best of them. They can also stop the run. I like Michigan State plus the points.
I agree with you. You know what? And the physicality of Michigan State's really good. They haven't played a physical team yet. Russian hasn't. I think they're a team, though, Scott, I just want to get your opinion real quick. I think they're a team in the Pac-12 this year that if you go to sleep on them, they can put a bunch of points up on you.
Yeah, so I could see that. I mean, listen, the Pac-12 didn't exactly open the season all that well. When you talk about Utah going into Florida, getting beat, things of that nature. I mean, UCLA struggled for 2.5 quarters in their opener. Of course, they come back last week and win again. By the way, that opener, I think they announced 27,000. I'm going to tell you right now, I love that stadium, the Rose Bowl. Love that area of Pasadena. There couldn't have been more than 6,000 or 7,000 in the stands. That's how sad that was. But anyway, Michigan State plus the points on over Washington in this one.
Yeah, absolutely. Is it my turn or your turn?
It is your turn to throw one, or I'll throw one at you, I guess.
Yeah, you throw one.
I'm going to throw one at you. How about Miami at A&M? I'm going to use the rust factor
This is
here.
first week jitters, like
no jitters.
the 40. We're like the 49ers last week in the first quarter.
No jitters, just worn out.
There we go.
Anyway, Miami at Texas A&M. A&M lay at 5.5, total 45. And once you lose a game like A&M did last week to Appalachian State, it becomes a situation where you got to work hard to get that cockiness back, to get that swagger back. They just got their tails handed till the offense stunk on ice. They gained less than 200 yards in that game against App State. Your thoughts on this one?
Well, it's too many points, in my opinion. You know, you got Van Dyke at quarterback there for Miami. This is why they brought in Cristobal as head coach, to win games like this. And Texas A&M back on their heels. I know it's a College Station, and that's worth a couple of points.
Sure.
Even they're going to pack the house, even though they lost. They're not down on this team, but. My problem is, how do you lay 5.5 against a very good football team when your offense hasn't shown anything all year long? You got a better quarterback, and quite frankly, I think Miami is an equal team, maybe slightly less, but it's going to be interesting to see how Texas A&M responds to last week, because that was embarrassing. And by the way, let's give App State a little credit. They hung 60-something on North Carolina, an ACC team. They go in the next week and beat an SEC team.
After a very tough, close loss to Carolina. I mean, it was 63-61, but that's another point to this A&M offense, and you can kind of understand why the folks around College Station, some of them at least, already calling for Jimbo on the chopping block. But they give up 63 points to North Carolina, and then you can't gain 190 yards against them at home at A&M. That's a little rough.
And by the way, A&M fan, calm down, because your buyout on Jimbo Fisher is going to be about $70 million.
Well, so. you do what Nebraska did, and you call the alums, and you say, we could use a little bit of help financially to get rid of this guy now. But I'm not saying A&M should get rid of Fisher. This isn't a Scott Frost Lincoln, Nebraska thing. This is he needed to go.
Yeah, he did need to go, unfortunately. We're going to switch gears to the NFL, and Scott, before we get to your games, we're talking about the Bucs and the Saints, a big divisional game here. Last week, they got a little over 5,000 guys in the Circus Survivor contest, and 3,447 of them were out. I'm in my own Survivor pool with over 1,100 guys, and 931 in my Survivor pool went out. A lot of carnage in week one,
Denver
lot of
Broncos.
upsets. What was your biggest takeaway from week one?
Divisional home dogs, they swept. Nothing different than any other time. They're what now, 16, 2-1. Divisional home dogs, I believe is the number. So, you know, for me, it's a situation where I either play the divisional home dog in one of those kind of games, or I stay away from the game, and we have one here. I don't get in the Survivor contest. I got enough stuff to do on the others. I mean, had a 4-1 card at Westgate and Circa on the contest. Happy about that. But I stay away from the Survivor because that is a whole different animal. And boy, do I not want to have to take the time, because you know how it is. You're in it. You got to pay attention not to just that week's games and who you think has the best chance to win outright, but you're looking down the road every week to see who's playing who and where you can best get the use out of a certain team. And I know probably a lot of people in your Survivor contest had the Denver Broncos over Seattle, had the San Francisco 49ers over the Chicago Bears a couple of games, couple of teams, I should say.
They sure did. And I got into the final, about 100 guys left last year in Survivor at Circa, and that was the most exhausting thing I've ever done in my life. I'm not doing it again, at least on that level with that kind of money. But ladies and gentlemen, Tom Brady's back.
Yep.
Giselle's pissed, but he's back. And he played, didn't look like a 46-year-old quarterback to me last week against Dallas. Of course, Dallas couldn't score a touchdown in their own stadium. Matter of fact, Dallas was the only team last week that didn't score a touchdown in the NFL. But nonetheless, I thought they looked very efficient, the Bucs did. And I thought Fournette looked extremely good, Scott, running the football. He looked like a Marshawn Lynch. And of course, the Saints had their problems with Atlanta before putting it away. And the Saints gave up a lot of yards running the football, which is what you're going to see this week. And they are a 2.5-point home underdog, total sitting at 44.5. Scott, what do you think here?
First of all, man, Dallas is a mess in the trenches on both sides of the line of scrimmage, even with a healthy Dak Prescott. Plus, they lost a couple of the receivers from last year for that game, and they were worse than I thought they'd be. The defense wasn't horrible. They kept holding Tampa Bay to field goals for the most part, but that offense was an absolute disaster. And if you have no passing game whatsoever, it's pretty easy to load up against the run, no matter which of the two Dallas running backs that you're talking about going against, which Tampa Bay did. Fournette was a monster running the football at times. I thought Brady was okay. He looked a little shaky. But here's the thing, man. You've got this New Orleans team that knows how to beat Tampa Bay. They did it before Brady arrived a few times. They've done it since. They're, 7-1, I believe it is. 7 of the last 8 meetings, the Saints have covered this number. I thought Jameis had a rough start last week, then kind of got it going and all that kind of good stuff. But you're talking about Michael Thomas being on the field. Alvin Kamara, he's not going to be suspended as of yet. He's on the field. Jameis Winston, they know how to defend this Tampa Bay offense. I got to grab the points here. I got to go with New Orleans in this game over Tampa Bay.
If this isn't on your teaser card, it should be. You get them through 3, you get them through 6, you get them through 7. Those are all key numbers. And your stat, home divisional dog.
Yeah, they're just
winning. Are crushing books if you take them. So.
And you don't have to play them, just don't play against them. That's my philosophy on something like that. Let's talk about the Dolphins at the Ravens, Tony, in Baltimore. Baltimore laying 3.5, 44.5. Another one like the game we just talked about, in that where kind of like the verdict is out so far on Miami because of who they played last week, New England. Now that kind of sounds funny because we're used to the Patriots playing for championships when Tom Brady was there. But the bottom line is they got Matt Patricia basically calling some shots on offense. He's the offensive line coach. He's a defensive coach. He failed at the next level as a head coach, and now he's calling some of the shots for this New England offense. So
and
the
he's
Dolphins,
failing as an assistant right now.
Absolutely, and he's got problems apparently with receivers. One receiver in particular where they're not getting along. So Miami beat that team, but it's tough to judge them how good they are because of the team they beat, having offensive plays called by Matt Patricia half the game. So bottom line is, listen, I like Baltimore this year. I like Lamar Jackson. I like a guy who gambles on himself. He could have signed the deal Baltimore put on the table. He's being like Aaron Judge. He goes, "No, man, I'm gonna bet on myself coming out and have a big year and sign for even more money." So listen, I think Baltimore gets the job done here. 3.5. I know people are going to be scared by that hook a little bit. I don't want Miami in this game.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm with you here. Bottom line is, if you take a look at that box score, which you and I grew up reading the Omaha World Herald, looking at the box scores, no internet.
Omaha World Herald.
Don't want to date ourselves, but Baltimore got out yarded 104 yards last week against the Jets. And by the way, 20-7 win over New England. They only had a 36-yard overall advantage. I got 2 words for you. Under 44.5 in this one. I like that one. And to wrap it up here, one right here in wonderful Las Vegas. I'll come over right here to the beautiful Red Rock Sportsbook. We got a nice little, behind the camera, we got a nice little lounge area. Scott and I have watched the game there, had a libation before. Good place to watch this one here. The Cardinals, who Kansas City put a butt whipping on last week, didn't look good either side of the ball, actually, in my opinion. By the way, Kansas City's defense isn't that good. And of course, the Raiders and Carr turning it over all over the place against the LA Chargers last week. Raiders 5.5 and 52, Scott.
Yeah, I'm looking at this game and I'm thinking, first of all, that's a couple of points higher than the advanced number last week. The Raiders were a 3-point favorite in this game, but what folks saw last week was an Arizona team that's really banged up offensively and defensively. And then you lose a guy like Chandler Jones, who, by the way, is now with the Raiders. That takes away a big time part of your pass rush. So I can't recommend yet, and I might change my mind by the weekend, laying the points here with the Raiders. But what I do think you can look at is potentially the over. And by the way, Arizona played on that field, which was resodded before the KC game. It was a disaster, just to ask Andy Reid.
Yeah.
And the thing is about this Raiders field, it looked like garbage 2 weeks ago when UNLV was playing on this same field. This year they were playing on the natural stuff that they wheel in from outside. And I saw also in preseason, the field looked like it was week 12 in the slop, circa 1974 up in Oakland. It looked that bad. So got to see how that field condition is going to be. But here's the advantage you have if you're an offense. You got wide receivers who know where they want to go. They know when and where they want to cut. Then you got slipping and sliding by corners and DBs who are trying to cover those receivers. I think you're going to see an over in this game. I don't think Arizona's defense is any good. Maybe not as bad as they were last week, but they're not good. They're missing too many parts. And I think the Raiders' defense is a little questionable because of the secondary. Losing Hayward out of the secondary is going to hurt this team all season long.
Can I play devil's advocate just for 1 second, just to ask you a question?
Yeah.
The Chargers and their high-powered offense got the ball 4 extra times and still only managed 25 points. Was that problems on their side of the ball, or was that the Raiders' defense might be a little better than we think?
I had the Chargers. I was happy. So
okay.
That was one of my plays last week, and so I was happy, especially with the missed 2-point conversion, laying the 3.5. Raiders missed the 2-pointer. Listen, I think the Raiders' offense is going to be just fine. That was Derek Carr throwing 3 interceptions.
Yeah.
He's got to get his crap together. He's got great wide receivers to throw to. You got maybe the best tight end in football. You've got Devontae Adams, who's now in place. You practice with him and work out with him every single year since you were at Fresno State. Even when he was in Green Bay, you're still working out with him in the summertime.
Right.
I think they get the offense together. Plus, they're playing a little bit more beatable defense, if you will, this week.
Hey, by the way, Josh McDaniels, if you're watching this video, Hunter Renfro's on your team. Target him a little bit more.
There's another one for you.
Yeah, he didn't target him that much. Adams was getting all the targets. Renfro he's like an Edelman. He's a big-time playmaker, and I think they might get him back involved in the offense a little bit.
They better, and that's what I like. You had a game that finished way under the total last week. Never had a chance of getting up into the 50s. I think the total was 53, and then maybe a little bit of an overreaction by the average Joe who plunks down his money, thinking that it's going to be an under here. Again, it's an opinion. It's the over between Arizona and the Raiders, Tony.
Hey, and by the way, folks, we're going to be doing these every other week, but the week we're not at Red Rock, Scott and I are going to be doing the 6 and 6 from our homes in a side-by-side video produced exclusively by Jeremy over at Doc Sports.
Right.
Let's give him a shout out. And so be sure and tune in. We'll have these videos up for you on the YouTube channel each and every Wednesday at some point in time later in the afternoon.
Don't forget to check out the plays, which are available every Thursday afternoon for the entire week. And 12-3 college football run is what I'm on right now. And then, of course, we won last week in college. We had a winning day with 2-1 mark in the pros, although it would have been nice to get Philly home to make it a 3-0 sweep. They were awfully close, but we're feeling good right now. So check us out. And check out that $60 free account.
I texted you during my near-death experience last week on Tennessee over Pitt.
Actually, what he said was, do you mind trying to start my car for me?
Yeah.
Right, Tony. Yeah. He's Tony George. I'm Scott Spreitzer. Let's put him in the win column, everybody.